Please welcome to the stage, Charles Busch!
Oh my God. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my God, that was quite a, I had no idea that was going on next door. Now my story is an autumnal one. Yes, it took place in the fall of 1975. I'm sure most of you are thinking, oh, you weren't even born then. You're very kind. Now that was my junior year in college. Now I grew up in New York City, and all my life, what's going on here? Okay, all my life, my great dream from the very beginning was to be on the stage, be in the theater, to be up there in the light. That's what I wanted more than anything. And so I got into Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, in the theater department. I don't know how I got in there. It was like a fluke, but they took me. And then I got there, and I just didn't fit in at all. And I was never cast in a play. It's not good when you're in the theater department. And no, it didn't bode well for the future. And I remember in acting class, I did a monologue as Lola in Come Back Little Sheep, but it didn't go over very well. I just didn't. I was too gay. I was too gay for Northwestern. I was too gay for the gay people. They were all very sort of into kind of a clone thing in the mid-'70s, and I was kind of fabulous, and they didn't get it. They didn't want it. So I had to get out. I had to get out of there. Just for at least one semester, I had to get out of there. And I saw on the bulletin board in the theater department a little advertisement for studying Scandinavian arts in Copenhagen. I said, I'll take it. I'll go. And they took me, and it was to study with Danish instructors who were speaking in English. And part of the deal was that you were supposed to live with a Danish family. I thought, no, that's not going to happen. But I did see in the fine print, it said you could stay in an international dorm. So I thought, I'll take that. And I'm so glad I did, because I remember when I got there to Copenhagen, and by the way, you have to call it Copenhagen, because if you want to get laid, you have to say Copenhagen, not Copenhagen, because that's what the Nazis called it. Anyway, I digress. So I remember, though, that I knew a girl in the program named Heidi Seidel. And Heidi she'd gone through 4 different Danish families. They all got rid of her. And she was just an awful girl. And but amusing, just the same. And I do remember that overhearing her in a conference with this very severe Danish woman, the head of housing, Hanna Sorensen, and Heidi saying, "I'm just not happy." And Hanna saying, "It is not necessary in life to be happy." That was the big problem. The two cultures didn't mesh. Well, anyway, so I stayed in this international dorm. And basically, I was the only American student there other than this very flamboyant black queen named Garrett, who called himself the diva. And everybody just referred to him as the diva. Well, we bonded. We really had to, because we were only Americans in this basically communist dorm. And so big poster of Lenin in the kitchen. So anyway, well, Garrett said he was going to take me under his wing and make me a diva also. And he said, the whole thing of going to these classes, just, you don't, bother with that. I'm going to show you Danish gay life. And so he, now in Northwestern, mind you, I was both too visible and invisible, if you can imagine that. And, well, the diva, first he put a little sort of auburn rinse in my long curly hair and a little bit of cola in my eyes. We found this fabulous sort of 1940s woman's mink coat that I wore over my tight jeans, my boots. I kind of looked like Maria Schneider in Last Tango in Paris. It was the height of my beauty. And so he took me to Madame Arthur's disco. And that was like the main discotheque in Copenhagen. gay disco. And we entered, and oh my God, suddenly from being invisible, I felt a kind of a power, because the Danish gay guys in 1975, they either wanted black boys or pretty little queens. And so between the diva and I, we just had it all, cornered. And suddenly I was just the whole center. I was Sally Bowles. I was the center of everything. And from then on, my God, the diva and I, first would be a typical day for us would be cocktails at the Maskin Bar, and then off to Madame Arthur's. And after that, when that bar closed, at 4 a.m, we'd be at the Why Not Club, for champagne and a raw egg yolk. Oh, it was just divine, darling, divine. There are all sorts of. I must say, a great moment for me was when one of the bartenders said to me, "Oh, everyone is talking about the new American bitch." That was me. I was the new American bitch. Oh my God, it was the greatest moment of my life. And I remember one time, after I had left Madame Arthur's with 17 gentlemen callers off to an orgy. And the next day, I remember the doorman saying, "Oh, you always leave with all the most beautiful men." Oh, it's divine, darling, divine. Well, I met this very beautiful boy from Norway named Terje. And he was just kind of like a little bit like Brian Jones in the Rolling Stones, but actually looked more like a very beautiful, very blonde, young Sandy Dennis with a big dick. Can you picture that? Yeah. And so we sort of bonded, and he was just kind of amoral, but with this angelic look. And I remember one time we met this guy, very well-dressed man who was just stinko drunk, just could barely stand up. And somehow, I don't know why Terje was bothering him, but anyway, he got this guy to take us to dinner. And, we had this big Italian dinner in Copenhagen. And then afterwards, we somehow went to this guy's apartment, and he was so drunk, he could really keep his eyes open. And Terje kind of instructed me to make out with the guy. And so I was, and then I didn't know what Terje was doing. He was pulling the guy's pants down, and he then took his wallet. And I said, "Let's get out of here." What? I was supposed to, we left, and he says, "I'll give you half the money." I said, "I don't want that money." I said, "Well, what are you going to do with all his IDs? Or we're going to throw him down the toilet." I said, "That's terrible. You can't do that. Are you insane?" So we did that, and I felt so horrible, so guilty. And when I got back to my dorm, and I saw the diva, and I told him, I confessed the whole story. I said, "I feel just horrible about this. That poor man." And the diva said to me, "Well, lesson number 1 in being a diva, never roll a drunk." All right? Lesson to all of you. Well, so now, Terje, though, you would have thought, okay, now I would have just, stay away from him. I was so fascinated by this dark side of life. I'd led such a protected childhood and youth, and I kind of wanted, I know this sounds kind of nutty, but I wanted to see if I was true to my own persona, so being sort of whimsical, and what would it be like to place myself in all these odd situations, and how would my personality change the circumstances? Well, Terje introduced me to his, I guess you'd call it his sugar daddy, who was a very handsome man, maybe 40 years old. He wasn't old, and elegant man. He was a Swiss count, he said. And I got the feeling he was married, but I don't know when he saw his wife, because he was at Madame Arthur's every night with us. And he was kind of like, if I was going to cast him, he was kind of a cross between Kevin Spacey, Antonio Banderas, and Omar Sharif, with a real big dick. And he was very mysterious. He was very enigmatic. And he would do this thing where when we'd have dinner, and he would just look at me, and he could stare at you for minutes without blinking, and you'd think, I'm going to do it too. Oh! I never could do. I always blinked first, you know. And he had this kind of power over me, and I never quite understood what he did other than being a count, you know. And well, he had this associate named Bengt, and Bengt was the total opposite of him. Bengt was Danish and big burly guy, blonde hair and a mustache and a big gap between his teeth, and there was just something very, very dangerous about him and dark. And I remember one day, it was his birthday, and Terja said we had to go buy Bengt a birthday present. So we went to a hardware store and bought him a crowbar, which I thought was odd. And Terja never had any cash with him, so I paid for the crowbar. And Bengt seemed to appreciate it. And then, now here was another thing happened. Now, whenever I would, you know, go off with Count Rolando, the Count, you know, since he was married, I'd take him to my dorm room, but one day he said, I'm going to take you someplace, and you must never tell anyone where you've been. I said, well, who do I know? I don't, you know. So, please, you know. So we got in his car, and we drove way, way outside the city into, it was kind of an industrial area, kind of looked like this, in fact. And yeah, and we parked the car outside this dreary, depressing, rundown building, and got into this horrible little elevator, and he took the key, went to the third floor, outside this banged up door, and he opened it, and turned on the light, and this horrible little apartment was just crammed with the most extraordinary antiques, you know, French provincial gold-gilded furniture and Greek icons and classical paintings and statuary and this fabulous big, looked like, you know, 16th century Spanish bed with a canopy, and all the furniture was just flush against each other. It really needs a decorator, you know. You can't hardly move, you know. I wouldn't put that settee right next to the bed, and but you know, we had sex there on this fabulous 17th century bed, and I knew that there was something wrong with Rolando, and yet, you know, when you're young, you're so easily just impressed, and I don't know, he made me feel like I was as valuable an acquisition as the Greek icon on the wall. I felt so beautiful and desired, even though he was actually even rather cruel to me in some ways, and rather dismissive. Shortly afterwards, Rolando announced that he was going to take all of us to Rio de Janeiro for an extended vacation. Terja, Bengt, and me. I thought, I can't go. I'd have to flunk all my courses. I can't just, what would my family say? I can't do that. And Terja said, everything's going to be first class. I said, I can't go. And, you know, Rolando said I was hopelessly bourgeois. And I felt just terrible. And so off they went, and I did my finals, but flunked 2 classes, passed 2, that was good enough. And off Garrett and I went back to America, where he was just another, you know, overweight black queen, and I was just another, you know, effeminate gay boy. And I got back to Northwestern, and it was early snow, and yet I was slightly different. I was. I remember at that time seeing a quote by the great poet Jean Cocteau, which said, whatever it is about you that disturbs people, cultivate that, because that's who you really are. And that gave me a kind of a strength. And I would get these postcards from Sur la Plage in Rio, you know, it just really stuck it to me. And then, sometime later, I got a letter from Norway, and it was from Terja, and he had gone back to his little village in Norway, and he said that after they got back from Rio, there was this terrible front-page scandal in Copenhagen that Rolando had been convicted of running an international antique thieving ring. Yeah, and he was in prison. Bengt was in prison and hung himself in prison. Yes, but Rolando was sitting in stir for a long time. And I recalled the very last time I saw him, before they left, and we were sitting at the Maskin bar, and he had dismissed me again as being just so bourgeois, and he started doing that stare thing on me again without blinking. And I thought, God damn it, I'm not going to blink. And I think 3 minutes went by, and he blinked first. But then he couldn't leave it at that, my triumph. He couldn't leave it at that. He then took his champagne glass and put it in his mouth and bit down. And the glass didn't shatter, but he just lifted out the perfect shape of his mouth in the glass. Well, how do you beat that? Well, I wasn't going to try that one. But then I started thinking about it. All this time went by, and I thought, he seems so much the stronger of the two of us, so dominating. But what kind of dreams did he have? His dream to run an antique thieving ring? What kind of paltry dream is that? Where's that going to take you, except sitting in the jug for years to come? And I thought about my own dreams of being a writer and being an actor, performer. And these dreams that I thought maybe were, certainly were scary and big question mark, and yet they were beautiful dreams and strong dreams. And my dreams came true. Thank you. Yeah.